Today we're going to talk about disappointments and unrealistic timeframes. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to get started by talking about reference points. When we want something, like we want to achieve something, more often than not, it's something that we've seen outside of us. It's not us ourselves. We're not saying, because we don't know what we don't know. So we have to see something as a reference point in order for us to recognize that something else exists, right? Otherwise, all things are one-sided and it's only us. There is nothing else because there is no reference. So what does that mean for you in terms of goals and expectations and timeframes? Well, imagine only you existed, okay? Just for a moment, only you existed. And in that world in which only you exist, you started from nothing. You started from nothing. You didn't know any better. You don't know what's what. And you just started doing something. Let's say it's a diet. You want more energy, or you want to start running, or you want a different physique, okay? And it was only you. There were no references, okay? At that point, it didn't matter what you do, as long as you were moving the right direction, you yourself, your feedback would be making forward progress or not making progress. But it'd only be against yourself because you're all that exists, right? So if you're all that exists and there is no reference, there is no better, there is no worse, it's just you, and you start taking positive actions only, okay? Positive actions, positive feedback towards your goal, each of those elements now become a part of you. So how is that good and how is that a problem? Well, most of us live our lives outside in regards to the way that we navigate our reference points, meaning we get feedback from the things around us and then we choose our behaviors based on those things. So if we're changing our behavior on a regular basis and we see reference points that influence us to change in a variety of different ways, or perhaps want something more, we begin to measure against that. Now, that can be a problem when we're measuring against something, but we don't know its origin story. We don't know how it started. So if we're measuring against somebody who's in great shape, okay, let's say we're getting started and we're measuring against somebody who's in great shape. And you're like, I want to be in great shape. So I see this program and in 90 days I can change my life. That's amazing. Well, there's a big difference between changing your life and changing your body. Okay, it's going to be very easy to change your body in 90 days. It's going to be very difficult to change your life. Now, what does that mean? Well, when we look at body transformations or we look at anything and we introduce a new set of variables, our body will temporarily adjust to those variables. That's what's cool about our body. Our body doesn't care. Physiologically, it's just going to adapt to whatever stress or changes are put upon us. And we'd like to believe those are positive. The challenge is what happens on day 91. You know, most people who've gone through a variety of different programs, when they're done, not only do they gain the weight back, but they put on more, okay? Now, why does that happen? Well, because the actions and the parameters of what they had to do changed, but who they were in their mind didn't, okay? And when you're creating goals and you're creating something for a lifetime of change, you want to change it in terms of behavior. You want to change it in terms of the actions that are taken. So let's say we're going to run, okay? And two people start at the same time. One has been a runner, but they're deconditioned. One person has never run before in their life. And they're both starting, okay? Same day, same weight. Chances are the person who ran before at a certain level is going to be able to adapt and make the changes faster than the person who hasn't, because they have more reference points in terms of the behaviors and actions that are necessary in order to become a runner. Whereas somebody else might not. They might not have the conditioning for the joints, ligaments, or tendons. They might not have the breathing. They might not even know what's going on. So when we start thinking about outcomes in terms of time-based, okay, while we can do it, okay, we can, what's more important to think is action-based. Here's why. We have control over action. We don't necessarily have control over outcome. There's a lot of variables that can contribute to an outcome that we might not see. So as we begin to think about our actions that we can take towards an outcome, when we start setting our expectations, when we start setting time frames around things that we don't have control over. And maybe we're trying something and for somebody else it was correct, but for us it isn't. What happens then is our disappointment can set in because we think we're doing something wrong because the expectation is we're supposed to have a result. It all depends on where you're at and where you're starting. So if we go back to our world where it's just us and there's no reference points, even the changes that happened, when they're not measured against something else, are still net positive. Does that make sense? So what I want you to think about today is when you're setting time frames and you're setting expectations and you're managing disappointments, what I want you to imagine is what you're doing is in your reality and you're the only person in that world. And the feedback that you're getting, remove from the time frame. So let's say we remove 90 days, 60 days, or whatever it is. And let's take an honest look at what are we doing and are we getting results that we want, even in a small area? Because it might not be what we're doing that is not right. We might need to change something else because our body's already adapted. So we want to make sure that we're making that forward progress. So to wrap this up, when you think of time frames and you think of your outcomes that you want, think of action-based goals towards it. Imagine that you're the only one with no reference point, okay? Nobody else exists, so there's nothing by comparison. So we can't gauge our achievements or disappointments based on other people. It's only based on what we're doing ourselves. And this should help manage a lot of disappointment. If you have questions, write them below. Happy to answer them, and I will see you soon.